Okay, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining Valley Water's virtual public scoping meeting on the Purified Water Project. I'm Melanie Richardson, Valley Water's Assistant CEO, and I am your MC tonight for this virtual meeting. Before we get into the presentation, I would like to turn the floor over to Albert Lee, who will go over some logistics about the Zoom platform. Albert?
All right, thank you, Melanie. I'm going to reshare my screen here. I know some of us are familiar with Zoom, but just in case if you're not, I will go over some of our functions here. What you have in front of you is the Zoom platform webinar version. If you're hearing us, great. If not, please feel free to call in if your internet is unstable. Tonight, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. You can ask your questions through the Q&A portal, which is at the bottom or top of your screen, depending on what version you're using. Feel free to enter your questions there. You can also ask your question verbally by raising your hand. I will enable your microphone and you can unmute yourself. For those on joining us by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. We don't quite recommend the chat box function because questions will tend to get buried pretty fast on there. All right, back to you, Melanie.
Okay, thank you, Albert. Now I'd like to provide an overview of tonight's virtual scoping meeting. We'll start with welcome remarks from Valley Water's Chair, Tony Estremera, and also from Director Richard Santos, who are also members of Valley Water's Recycled Water Committee. From there, we'll move into our main presentation, which will include an overview of the project and how you can provide feedback related to the environmental impacts that will be analyzed as part of the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA. We're encouraging members of the public and agencies to provide comments on the scope and the content of the environmental impact report. Formal comments can be either emailed or sent through regular mail. We will also provide these details during the presentation. Following the presentation, you will all have the opportunity to ask questions about the presentation and the project's environmental review process. Now, I would like to introduce our board chair, Tony Estremera from Valley Water's Board of Directors. Welcome, Chair Estremera, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Melanie. Good evening, my name is Tony Estremera, and I serve as the chair of the Valley Water Board representing District 6. Before I continue, I'd like to thank the representatives of the federal, state, and local elected offices who have joined us for this public meeting, including from the city of Santa Clara, council members Kevin Park and Karen Hardy. Good evening to you and thank you for joining us this evening. Welcome also to tonight's scoping meeting for the Purified Water Project. Valley Water is committed to ensuring a safe and reliable water supply. The COVID-19 pandemic, the recent water disaster in Texas, and water crisis in Flint, Michigan, all show how important it is for us to always have clean water available to drink and wash our hands. Here in Santa Clara County, drought is also a real threat to our water supply. Currently, the U.S. Drought Monitor classifies almost all of our county as being in a moderate drought. And we have no idea, of course, how long it will last, or in fact, how bad our water supply might suffer. Clearly, we just can't sit back and wait for more rain. It's important that Valley Water continues to invest in infrastructure that ensures our water supply is sustainable and capable of meeting future water demand. And that's why we're moving forward with projects like the Anderson Dam Seismic Retrofit Project and the Purified Water Project. The Purified Water Project will help Valley Water meet our water supply goals, which includes providing at least 10% of the county's water demand through recycled and purified water by 2025. Since 2014, Valley Water has operated the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center to provide Santa Clara County with a locally controlled and drought-resistant water supply. It has been instrumental in helping demonstrate just how the latest water purification technology can be used to speed up the water cycle. This unique water supply means that we don't need to wait around for rain or import water from hundreds of miles away like we do now. With the proposed Purified Water Project, Valley Water will build a new water purification facility capable of providing at least 10 million gallons per day to replenish our groundwater supply. Now, I would like to hand things over to my colleague, Director Richard Santos, for some remarks. Director Santos, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Estamera, and good evening, everybody. My name is Richard Santos. I'm the Director of Valley Water District representing District 3. I think it is very important for all of us to think about how we can continue securing a reliable water supply for future generations. With climate change, more frequent droughts cannot afford to delay making the necessary investments in our infrastructure. The Purified Water Project is a type of project that will help us ensure reliable water supply for our county, both in the short and long term. Some of you may be aware of the existing Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center located in District 3, which is in Alviso, part of San Jose. You may have taken in a person or a tour there. Our staff has been always available for tours and do a great job. We are incredibly proud of their purification center in demonstrating innovative purification technology to a wide audience. With the Purified Water Project, we have unique opportunity to build upon the facility's success and expand purified water used into groundwater replenishment and continue being one of the leaders on the water reuse in our state and county. To help with that planning, we need to hear from you. Your engagement is critical as we move forward with all of our projects. We benefit when we hear from you on these projects. During tonight's presentation, Valley Water staff will give an overview of the project and how the project will replenish our groundwater supply and how you can provide formal comments in the CEQA process. You will have an opportunity to learn the latest news and about the scope and the content of its environmental impact report that Valley Water is preparing. So you have our staff will provide you with details on how to submit written comments and how you can be considered on the environmental impact report. Folks, I can tell you this is the future, which is now. This is vital to save the environment and use less domestic water. I welcome our Santa Clara Council colleagues and all of you out there. And I'll go back to Assistant CEO, Melanie Richardson. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Santos. And now I'd like to turn things over to Kirsten Struve, who serves as our Assistant Officer in Valley Water's Water Supply Division, and Jim O'Toole from Environmental Science Associates to present tonight's overview. After our presentation, there will be an opportunity to address any questions regarding the presentation from our virtual audience. With that said, I now turn it over to Kirsten and Jim for the presentation.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Again, my name is Kirsten Struve. I'm Assistant Officer of the Water Supply Division here at Valley Water, and hopefully you can see my screen. The scoping meeting purpose is to provide an orientation updates on the Purified Water Project in EIR and provide an opportunity for suggestions regarding the EIR scope and content, as well as an opportunity to further detail environmental issues, feasible alternatives and mitigation measures, and then comments will be considered in the preparation of the draft environmental impact report, or EIR. With climate change, Santa Clara County will face more droughts with resulting economic impacts. Valley Water is also concerned about land subsidence, which is the land sinking due to overpumping of groundwater. And the chart here shows how our land surface sank when groundwater was overpumped with increasing population and development in Santa Clara County. And so this can also have a significant impact on our infrastructure. While half of the water in Santa Clara County is imported from outside the county, it has been really important to continue to develop locally controlled supplies. That is why recycled water and purified water is an important component of our water supply portfolio. For some definitions, recycled water refers to treated wastewater that is used for non-potable purposes, so not for drinking, and distributed in purple pipes. It is used for landscape irrigation or industrial uses. Purified water is highly treated wastewater that has gone through additional processes to produce water that is suitable for drinking. And right now, purified water is 5% of our county's water supply. The purpose of this project is to further develop purified water as a drought-resilient local water supply. And per our water supply master plan, we have a goal to double the share of recycled water and purified water in our portfolio to 10% of our demand. This shows exactly what we're trying to do. And as the chair already mentioned, we have a collaboration with the city of San Jose we constructed the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center, which began operations in 2014. This purification center, which you can also tour virtually at this time, uses microfiltration, reverse osmosis, and ultraviolet disinfection. And similar technology also provides safe, clean, and reliable water to astronauts on the International Space Stations and water suppliers around the world. We will use that same technology for this project and then pump water to replenish our groundwater basins. The project includes a new or expanded water purification facility located in either San Jose or Palo Alto, and 18 to 20 miles of pipeline to the Los Gatos recharge system that you can see here, the different pipelines and the locations. You will note an arrow leaving the purification center called RO concentrate. That stands for reverse osmosis concentrate. Basically, reverse osmosis removes all the pollutants from the water and is also the technology that is used for desalinating seawater. And for every 100 gallons that goes into our purification center, 85 gallons of pure water are produced, and the remaining 15 gallons concentrate all the dissolved constituents that were in the water already. So no materials are added, and the amount of pollutants is the same. And that is what is called the RO concentrate. At the current facility in San Jose, the RO concentrate is blended with the wastewater effluent discharged to the bay. And this approach is included and allowed in the treatment plant's permit and has been used since 2014 successfully. And now I will turn it over to Jim O'Toole.
Thanks, Kirsten. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to step back and take a look at our California Environmental Quality Act EIR process. This evening is the first of several opportunities for the public to participate in the project. Valley Water has circulated a notice of preparation explaining the project, and this scoping meeting tonight is an effort to provide an opportunity for the public and agencies to comment on the scope of analysis in the EIR. We'll then consider those comments as we prepare the draft EIR, and then there's a second opportunity for the public to participate in reviewing the draft EIR and commenting on the analysis. And then finally, after comments are written up in response and a final EIR is prepared, the public again has the opportunity as part of the final EIR process to participate. So these are some of the opportunities available and provided for under the CEQA process. Next slide. From a project objective standpoint for CEQA, of course, as Kirsten was articulating, supporting Valley Water's water supply reliability goals, including the provision of at least 10% of all water supplies through recycled water, and the development of purified water consistent with Valley's Water Supply Planning Program 2040. So those are two key objectives for the proposed project. Getting down to the specifics, the project proposes to implement a potable reuse supply of about 10 MGD to a 12.5 MGD, kind of depending on the hydrologic year, providing an annual yield of approximately 11,200 acre feet of sustainable purified water supply to meet local long-term future demands. Of course, a key objective in any project is to implement a project in a manner that reduces or minimizes environmental impacts. And for Valley, Water. They're very interested in implementing this project in partnership with recycled water producers to develop new local drought resilient water supplies in a cost-effective and timely manner. Next slide. So as Kirsten identified, there's two potential projects that we're examining, but Valley is looking at a preferred project to evaluate the site adjacent to San Jose's existing Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center as Valley's really preferred project that's shown over here in the green pipeline area. Additionally, we'll be examining the Palo Alto flat top site alternative. We'll be looking at that at an equal level of detail as part of our CEQA analysis to allow the ability to compare and contrast and provide distinctions between the two project sites. Next slide. So turning to the project components of the preferred project, again, advanced water purification facility adjacent to the existing Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center and integrated with that facility with a 10 MGD capacity. The project will include pipelines to the San Jose, Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility, both for source water, that treated water effluent that's already been treated at the wastewater treatment plant will be the source water for this new facility. And then as Kirsten was indicating, concentrate pipeline back to the facility for blending and eventual release into the environment. There'll also then be a conveyance pipeline down to Valley's Los Gatos Pond Complex so that that water can be introduced into Valley's conjunctive use operations to recharge the groundwater basin and then eventually used in the context of indirect potable reuse. Next slide. So this graphic shows the project site location for the preferred project adjacent to the existing Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center. This will be the focus of our analysis. It's right off of Zanker Road, and so we'll be examining this project site in our document. Next slide. At that location, Valley will be implementing a purified water treatment process, as Kirsten indicated, taking highly treated wastewater and then applying additional treatment processes, microfiltration, reverse osmosis, and UV light disinfection and advanced oxidation to create purified water available for use and introduction into the groundwater basin. Next slide. This graphic shows the connecting pipelines, the source water and concentrate management pipelines from the proposed facility over to the San Jose, Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility. Next slide. And then at a regional scale shows the location of the preferred project site and the conveyance pipeline extending southward across the valley through Santa Clara, portions of San Jose, and Campbell down to Valley's existing Los Gatos recharge pond complex. It's about an 18-mile route. The pipeline will be constructed within existing roadways. Next slide. This is an overview graphic of the existing Los Gatos recharge system. Several ponds already in operation utilizing different water supply sources. This purified water will be integrated into those sources and recharged into the groundwater basin with eventual recovery for indirect potable reuse. Next slide. So turning now to the alternative project, again, we're going to examine that at an equal level of detail throughout our EIR. This is the former Palo Alto Los Altos treatment plant site. It's affectionately referred to as the flat top site. But to implement this project, again, Valley would be working with Palo Alto to implement a 10 MGD advanced purification facility on this former treatment plant site. Again, connection pipelines to Palo Alto's regional treatment plant for source water and concentrate management, and then routing of a conveyance pipeline to the Los Gatos recharge complex. Next slide. This is an aerial photo of the flat top site. You can see the previous ponds associated with the water treatment facility. It's located on San Antonio Road on the bay side of US 101. Next slide. And then this shows the aerial photo with the pipeline route connections between the flat top site located in the lower right-hand corner and Palo Alto's regional water quality control plant. So pipelines both for source water and for concentrate management. Next slide. And then finally, the conveyance route extending across the valley with a slightly different alignment from Palo Alto through Sunnyvale, and then connecting with the previous alignment that moves southward through Santa Clara, San Jose, and the city of Campbell. Next slide. So in addition, we'll also be looking at some project alternatives as part of our CEQA analysis. We'll include examination of the no project alternative, what would occur if you didn't implement the project. We'll be looking at alternative pipeline routes shown here in the brighter colors of yellow and green. There's a an eastern set of alignments, the yellow and green locations, and then a western alignment shown in orange to present alternatives to the proposed pipeline route. We'll also be looking at alternatives for managing the concentrate. As we indicated, the preferred project is blending with effluent from the regional treatment plants, but there are other management options that will be examined, such as natural-based solutions, a larger deep water outfall, other alternatives that Valley Water and agencies in the region have examined over the years relative to this concentrate management issue. And then we'll also be looking at, and in any project you typically look at, is there a smaller project that might avoid or minimize individual impacts? Next slide. So the EIR will be looking at all of the CEQA impact areas within Appendix G. They're listed here. I wanted to touch on kind of a couple of key issue areas that will be examined in the EIR. Next slide. A lot of the impacts related to the project will be associated with construction impacts, both at the selected treatment plant site, but also along the conveyance pipeline. These are typically temporary short-term impacts related to traffic disruption, noise, air quality, water quality, and these are impacts that kind of move as you're constructing the pipeline. So they're typically short-term in any one location with an installation rate of approximately 100 feet per day. They're kind of moving through the area. These are impacts that are typically mitigated fairly well, and Valley Water has a robust set of best management practices that they apply to construction projects. So given their short-term nature, we would say that these best management practices would be appropriately applied here. We'll also be examining cultural resources. The majority of the project alignments are in roadways, but there are some wetland resources at the individual treatment plant sites, so we'll be examining that. And then anytime you're excavating or constructing, there's the potential to impact cultural resources. So we'll be reviewing those resources along the pipeline routes. Next slide. And then water quality will be a focus in the EIR from a couple different perspectives. First, the project will be creating purified water using the reverse osmosis process. It's very similar to what's currently being utilized by the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center. Groundwater recharge at the Los Gatos Pond Complex would be in compliance with the Division of Drinking Water groundwater replenishment standards. So we'll be examining both the RO process and the groundwater recharge process relative to the current regulations. And then concentrate management. Again, the preferred project includes blending and discharge with treated effluent under the selected facilities NPDES permit, but we'll also be looking at other options to be examined as well. So just a note on schedule, we're in this process of public participation for notice of preparation and public scoping meetings here in March. We're anticipating having a draft EIR ready for public review sometime in the fall, targeting October, with a final EIR coming back around probably by the end of the year, and then bringing that EIR to the Valley Water Board of Directors for consideration in January of 2022. And just a reminder, Oz, in our scoping comment process, we do have the notice of preparation. It's been circulated. There's a 30-day public review period associated with that. So April 22nd is the due date for comments, and you can provide comments to Valley Water either by email or through written letter submitting to the district. So as we turn it back to Al, I just wanted to encourage folks to comment and remind you that the purpose of the notice of preparation process is to comment on the scope of analysis in the EIR, and I'll hand it back over to Albert.
All right, thank you. I am going to spot myself here, and I do know we do have some questions coming in. I just want to remind everyone to enter your questions in the Q&A portal. You can also raise your hand to ask your question verbally. Once I see your hand go up, I will call out your name and enable your microphone. I do see we had a couple of written response questions here. I know, Alice, you had asked a question about the impacts of, if any of this will have on Emily Renzo freshwater ponds, which are an extending use of freshwater in Palo Alto. Miguel, I know you wrote a response there, but I'm gonna have you come on camera as well to also provide a verbal response. So Miguel, I'm gonna look for you here on my screen, unless I missed you somewhere. I think we may have lost Miguel. Oh, there you go.
No, I'm here. So as I said in the comment section, the County Water Reuse Master Plan already accommodates and allows for the Renzo Marsh flows of 1 MGD, and actually it's 1 MGD is the required for the NPDES, and we've allotted for 3 MGD. So those flows will continue and have been included in the analysis.
Great, thank you. And for those wondering, MGD is million gallons per day. I am going to jump to verbal questions here. I see a raised hand. Let's see. Karen Hardy, your microphone is enabled. Please go ahead and ask your question verbally.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find the unmute. Yes, because looking at this from a point of view of Santa Clara, we do own 20% of the water treatment plant. I have several questions. First off, you've got the water treatment plant that's there already. And then you show you want to build something on next to it that would have the 10 million gallons per day capacity, I'm guessing. And that would be 10% only of the water usage in the valley. Is that correct?
I'm going to have Kirsten start with the question, and then feel free to well, I'm getting some feedback here from Karen. So Kirsten, I'm gonna have you answer first, and then feel free to tap in other staff as well.
Sure, yeah, so with the San Jose location, we would propose to expand the existing facility that is there, and it will continue to provide water to enhance the non-potable, the purple pipe system, and then add capacity, which is why we need more room to do the recharge at the Los Gatos ponds. So that would be the 10 million gallons per day. So it would still be doing both. And then those two items together, plus all other recycled water use in the county, will be 10% of the demand at that point, yes.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna move on to the next question here. I'm gonna go to the Q&A portal. Just give me 1 second. So Alice Smith had a question related to global warming. So she asked, with global warming and earthquake dangers, wouldn't this be better off on higher ground location? Kirsten or Jim, who do you think we should direct this question to?
I can start, and then Jim could add. So we'll definitely be looking at these types of issues in the EIR, but we also have to consider where our source water is coming from, and all of the wastewater treatment plants are very close to the bay, and we want to be mindful also of our energy use and not contributing further to global warming. So it would be more pumping if we found of our source water as well as our concentrate if we did it on a higher ground. Jim, did you have anything to add?
I would just add that that's a good comment, and that will be something that we'll be examining in the EIR. Certainly, potential effects related to sea level rise over the long term will be something that we'll be examining, and that might be a differentiator between the two projects.
Great, thank you. And I do want to recognize that our Vice Chair Kerman did join us, so I just want to say a little hello to him as well. And we do have about 68 people joining us via Zoom and another 6 on Facebook Live. So thank you all for joining us tonight. All right, moving on to our next question here. We have a question from Bill Tuttle. I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly. Bill asked, the countywide recycled water master plan shows projects to meet 25 million gallons per day of flow. Will the San Jose location EIR be done with 25 million gallons per day expansion in mind? Is there a Sunnyvale option to add to the Palo location to reach 24 million gallons per day? Kirsten first, but if not, I think Miguel will be next to answer that question.
Yeah, I'll start and then Miguel can answer as well. So the countywide reuse plan does include 24 million gallons per day options, but this project is 10 million gallons per day. And the reason for that is that our water supply projections, the demand has been lower. And so a smaller facility is what we're pursuing at this point. Miguel, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's correct. I would just add that for a 24 MGD expansion, we are looking at then combining the effluents of Sunnyvale and Palo Alto in the future. But for this project, it is just Palo Alto for 10 MGD. So yeah, correct.
Great, thank you. And Alice, I do know you have a couple of questions in the Q&A part, but I do see that your hand's raised. I'm thinking you may be asking this that similar question. So Alice, I have your mic unmuted. Please ask your question.
Thank you very much. So a supplemental question, which is tied into the flood, is also earthquake, because my understanding is that the San Andreas Fault plus the Hayward Fault together are both at like an 8 to 9%. There's like a 50% chance that there's going to be an earthquake in the next 10 to 20 years along these two faults. And one of them is predicted at 8 to 9 on the Richter scale. So is this all going to just come down in the end, or because a lot of this is landfill area, it's not very safe, it's not very sound. I think it's a great project. I want to support you, but I also want to be realistic because there's a lot of money involved and it may be dangerous. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alice. Let's go with Kirsten first.
That's a really good question, and we will definitely be looking at that, but maybe Jim can give a little more detail of how we would look at these kind of hazards in the EIR.
Thank you, Kirsten. Yeah, hazard analysis is something that we include in the EIR process, and you're right, the Hayward and San Andreas faults are some of the largest faults in California. So we would be providing that context and then looking at the individual sites themselves to see if there's any distinguishing characteristics relative to those two locations. Water and wastewater treatment plants have pretty stringent design standards that they have to adhere to, including being able to withstand various levels of earthquake activity. So we'll be articulating that in the EIR process.
If I could add just one item, Valley Water has thought about the reliability issues because not only are our local resources impacted, but as Kirsten mentioned, we're dependent on half of our water coming from outside that has to go over the Calaveras Fault, the Hayward Fault to get there. And those could be significantly impacted with extended outages, even though there's initiatives there. So having some locally controlled water resources is also an important reliability feature.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't introduce some of our staff. So Miguel works with our Recycle Purified Water Unit. Philippe, remind me again of your role with this project again. I'm
a program advisor from Liquisti.
Thank you so much. And I would say that I just totally blanked out on the. I was going to have a response related to that. I'm just going to move on to the next question, and there's a related question to this process. So Corey asked, "Is the EIR ready, and can you send the link?" I think this whole meeting and this whole process that leads up to the EIR. So you're very involved early on this process. So tonight's meeting is about scoping the different issues that could be potentially studied in the EIR. So Corey, it will be ready eventually, but we're still pretty early in the process. Kirsten, if you want to add anything to that as well.
No, you got that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. Moving back to, let's see, I see a raised hand from Councilmember Hardy. Councilmember, I think it's Councilmember.
That's fine, thank you. What I was wondering about, because both proposals take the pipeline right through Santa Clara, either way you look at it. So I was wondering what was the diameter of the pipe, could be inside or outside diameter, just to give a scope for that. And an easement situation, you mentioned along roads. Are you talking along county roads like expressways? And a kind of a time frame, because this would greatly impact Santa Clara from a point of view of construction and possible, if you said next to the streets, it could cause us some problems with traffic.
Great, thank you. Kirsten?
I'll turn it over to Jim, but so in terms of pipe size, we're analyzing, I think 36 inches, but the actual project may be smaller. So we're trying to go for the worst case, but.
Yeah, I would just add that it's anticipated that the pipeline routes would be within existing roadways. As you mentioned, there's quite a bit of pipeline that goes through Santa Clara proper. And so as we go through our analysis, we'll be looking at both the temporary and disruption impacts related to pipeline installation, but also, as I indicated, pipeline construction is kind of a moving process. And so those impacts in any one location will move over time. So we tend to view them as short term, but certainly they can be very disruptive from a traffic flow standpoint, and also from a overall public perception standpoint, when that construction is affecting access to your residential or access to your business, those impacts can be very dramatic. So that's something that we'll be looking at as part of the EIR process. We're looking forward to talking to the planning departments of each of the municipalities as part of that analysis to get an understanding of kind of local conditions and whether there's any optimization that Valley Water can do relative to the pipeline routes.
Great, thank you here. We're gonna move on to our next question in the Q&A portal. This is from Katja Irvin. Are you giving up on the idea of direct portable reuse? If you do decide to do direct instead of indirect, how will that impact the EIR and CEQA process? So for those who are watching and may not be familiar with the terms, when we say portable, we mean drinkable use. And when we say indirect, we're talking about indirectly recharging our groundwater basins and groundwater sources, as opposed to augmenting our raw water supply direct to our water treatment plants. So this question I'm going to direct to Miguel first for in terms of current activities related to direct portable use, and if others want to jump in, feel free to as well.
Sure, thanks, Alv. And just for clarification, the scope of this project does not involve any direct portable reuse. So it's all indirect portable reuse. However, the master plan is looking at the long-term and possible opportunities pending regulations availability by the state. So in 2023, we're looking at getting potentially some regulations, and we have some options for our elected officials and decision makers to consider. And that includes definitely DPR on that analysis.
And I'll just answer the other question. So since it is not part of this project, it is not included in this EIR, and we would need to do a separate CEQA process for such a project.
And then Corey, your question earlier about the EIR, although that's not ready for review, the notes of preparation is. And so I put the link into the Q&A. You can also find the notes of preparation by going to the project website, and that's also was entered in the chat box earlier. All right, moving on to our next question here. It says Jay Rand. I hope I'm saying that correctly as well. So they ask, are there plans to add purple fire hydrants on the pipeline route? That way we could virtually extend the pipelines utilizing water trucks, possibly electric. We would use for construction and landscaping purposes and deliver the water into cisterns and water storage tanks if they have a Title 22 report on file. I think we're talking about purified water and recycled water may be different, but I'm gonna hand this question to Kirsten first.
Sure, yeah, so this water that we're talking about from this project is purified water, so it is meeting drinking water standard, and the purple pipe is non-drinking water. So there are no plans for that in terms of this particular project, and I'm not sure about the use of non-potable in fire hydrants, so maybe someone else can add to that. Or maybe we don't know.
Maybe probably not, but if not, we can get back to you and maybe email us and we'll work on an answer for you. And so if you go to the project website, my contact information is on there. All right, moving on to the next question. I see a raised hand. We see a raised hand from Stan Williams. I'm gonna enable your microphone, Stan. Go ahead and unmute. Oop, accidentally put you as a panelist. So Stan's gonna be on the panelist side. Stan, are you there for me to unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought you unmuted me and I'm
sorry, that was my fault.
Discussion with myself.
Go ahead and ask the question, Stan.
First, just a comment. As you guys have pointed out, this requires a partnership with the municipality to perform the project. So I just wanted to comment that Kirsten, I think it's great that you're involved in the project with your extensive background in municipal agencies. I think that's a good matchup. My question is trying to reconcile the NOP, as I read it, versus Jim's comments about alternatives. So I read the NOP to say that for RO concentrate management, basically the environmental document is going to look at mixing the effluent. And then it says other alternatives reviewed but no longer being considered were concentrate management options. So I was trying to reconcile it because I heard, Jimmy, clearly you said that they were going to look at concentrate management options. I just want to make sure I wasn't misreading this somehow.
Sure. Thank you, Stan. So Jim?
Thanks, Stan. I wouldn't say that you're misreading that, but certainly as part of the scoping process with our responsible agency partners, there's been articulation of interest in additional options relative to concentrate management. So our thinking as part of this process is growing, and so we'll be taking a look at those comments received and articulating different options for concentrate management because folks are definitely interested in those. So probably we're a little specific in the notice of preparation, and that's what the secret process is all about.
All right, and Stan, I'll be making you back on the attendee side, so quick mouse fingers on my end. All right, moving on to our next question here in our Q&A portal. Alice Smith asked, does this negate using Palo Alto? I'm a bird watcher. I don't understand your last sentence. I think this might be earlier in the presentation. Kirsten, do you recall what this may be referring to?
It might have been referring to the wetlands, but we don't anticipate impacts on the wetlands, the Emily Renzel Marsh. And in terms of the Formolos Altos treatment plant site wetlands, we will be looking at any impacts there through the environmental impact report. I'm also a bird watcher. I'm sure hoping it doesn't impact that.
Great, thank you. Moving on to our next question here from Stuart in Cupertino. Hi, I'm not really clear on the previous questions and if they touch on the topic of my question, which is, how does directing the water into the groundwater compare with an alternative of directly filling our local reservoirs? And this is kind of goes to the heart of direct and indirect potable reuse. And so Kirsten first, or possibly Aaron or Miguel.
Sure. Yes, so filling it into reservoirs is more sort of the direct use, depending on which reservoir, of course. And our reservoirs are also further away from the wastewater treatment plants. So really the best place for us to use this in the water supply is to put it in our groundwater, which is our largest storage, from where it also doesn't evaporate, and for which there are current regulations that we can do that. And so that's why we've chosen Los Gatos Pond Recharge System.
Great, thank you. And anything else from our staff? Just chime in. If not, I'll go on to the next question here. Go ahead, Miguel.
I just want to add that indeed, about 9 years ago, we did look at surface water augmentation for purified water to the closest, largest reservoir, being Anderson, and the cost was very prohibitively high. So it confirmed what Kirsten just mentioned.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to our next question here. As a reminder, if you're on Facebook, feel free to make it a comment and we'll just jump the question in. And you can also raise your hand as well to ask your question verbally. So this question is a three-parter from Jennifer Hedderly. The first question is, how will recharge water be reclaimed? So we'll start with that question first. Kirsten?
Yeah, it will be put into the groundwater, and then anyone who uses groundwater would pump it up from there. So that's how it would be used.
Great, and then it does take a matter of several months and years before it reaches the wells after going through a recharge pond. The second question from Jennifer is, do you anticipate brine issues to be different in each location from the current wastewater plant released into the bay? So Kirsten first.
Probably a little, yes. So the San Jose treatment plant is much larger and has a much larger flow, whereas the Palo Alto treatment plant is smaller and has less flow. So impacts may be different, and we'll be looking at that. But Jim, do you want to add anything?
No, you've characterized it correctly, Kirsten. That'll be an analysis that we'll be providing in the EIR, and those two treatment plants are different in terms of their capacities and also in terms of their location. So we'll be examining potential impacts related to both. Of course, they both discharge under their NPDES permit requirements, and so that will be the threshold that we'll be looking at.
Great, thank you. And the last question is, are there burring out issues at either site?
There is a history of burring owls at the San Jose, at the larger areas around the San Jose treatment plant. We have been doing some monitoring at the specific location, and there's some history of owl activity at that location. So we'll be examining that as part of the EIR. I will say that our monitors were just out there over the last couple of days because we're starting to take a look at the project side, and they've had negative surveys so far.
Great. And just to remind folks, as part of the process, you can also submit formal written comments, and then there's the information that's listed on the project site as well. You can email it or mail it in as well. All right, moving on to the next question here. The last part of Jennifer's question, actually, she asked an additional one, but this is related to sea level rise. I think a lot of us are very, very aware of this. How will sea level rise impacts be managed by this project? Kirsten?
We will definitely be looking at that as well. And it will be included in our analysis, and maybe Jim can go into more detail.
Sure. Well, a couple of things around sea level rise to note. One, there's a very, although it's clearly a present issue, there's a long time frame related to sea level rise, and there are several regional efforts ongoing to try to provide sea level rise protection in the South Bay. There's the South Bay Shoreline Project. There's the Safer Bay project. And so as part of our analysis, we'll be reviewing those projects as it relates to the specifics of the two treatment plant sites, and identifying whether the timing of those projects, their ability to provide the level of protection necessary. There could also be fill associated with the design of the individual treatment advanced water purification facility sites. So those are all issues that we'll be examining as part of the EIR.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on here to our next set of questions. This is from Alice. She wants to thank Miguel for his response earlier. Her question is, so this will be separate from Palo Alto existing or in place of Palo Alto water treatment plant, or this takes the outflow and will be pumping. I need to see this site as there are now considerable increase in freshwater birds as a result of Emily RFWPs, which have been, in my view, a wonderful environmental improvement. Sorry, I'm trying to do my best to read the question. We now have pied grebes and widgeons in abundance, and I appreciate that I have been able to see this excellent presentation. So let me try to recapture this. So will there be is this a separate site, the Palo Alto site, from the existing water treatment plant, or does this take outflow and will be pumping, et cetera? So, if you can read the question.
I think I understand the question. So the existing Palo Alto Regional Water Quality Control Plant is on Embarcadero Way, and that facility will be providing water to a new facility we're building at the end of San Antonio Road. So both locations are, so the location of our new facility along near San Antonio Road is not close to the Emily Renzel freshwater wetlands, and there should be no impact on those wetlands.
Great, thank you. All right. Question from Katja Irving. I think they can say this one a little bit easier. Can you say more about RO concentrate management? Do you anticipate being able to blend all the RO concentrates and dispose it into the bay? Also, are there any state level regulations regarding RO concentrate? RO is reverse osmosis. Kirsten?
Yeah, I can start and then maybe someone else wants to chime in. So as we already discussed at the current Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center, what we do with the RO concentrate is blend it with the remaining wastewater and then discharge it to the bay. And that is the San Jose, Santa Clara Regional Wastewater Facility is able to stay in compliance with all their permit requirements by doing so. And so we're working with our partners to find similar solutions to our RO concentrate for this project. We've been doing a lot of different studies on other options, including modeling and working with stakeholders and regulators. And so some of those other options will also be analyzed in the EIR. And the regulators have been very supportive of increased water recycling and the need to manage this waste stream cost effectively, because it doesn't increase the amount of pollutants and it increases concentration. And there are actually in the basin plan for our regulatory document, there is a statement in there that the regional board may consider increasing concentration standards if needed to support increased water recycling.
Great, thank
hopefully
you.
that answered the question.
All right. Councilmember Karen Hardy just thanks us for our opportunity to ask questions today, and so looks forward to seeing this legal report when it's finished. So thank you, Councilmember Hardy. We have a question follow-up from Joe Round from Purple Pipe Water Services. So he asks, is a pipeline from Palo Alto or San Jose to Los Gatos considered fourth stage recycled water and go through non-portable purple pipeline? Or is it considered advanced purified water and go through an entirely different type of pipeline? Thanks, Joe. Susan?
It is not non-potable, so it meets or exceeds all drinking water standards. So it's a different type of pipeline.
Yeah, so just Joe, so it won't be a purple pipeline system you have a lot of see in our communities. All right, moving on to Jennifer here. Jennifer asked, do you expect SLR mitigations for this project to restrict local jurisdictions' ability to pursue nature-based solutions? I think If Kirsten, if you also know what SLR means, please
Yeah,
feel free to.
sea level rise. I don't think so, but Jim, do you have?
No, I think I'm understanding the question, but I don't believe that sea level rise mitigation or projects to address sea level rise will restrict local jurisdictions' ability to pursue a nature-based solution. So that, as we've talked about, nature-based solutions is one of kind of the concentrate management options that that has been examined over the years, and any implementation would have to be integrated with sea level rise approaches and adaptation strategies. So I don't think those are mutually exclusive.
Great, thank you. And then feel free to enter any questions there. We still have some time to work with. And if you put your question in the Q&A portal or raise your hand, we'll be happy to answer it. And also on Facebook as well. All right, we have a question here from Susan. Could you speak to the regulations for groundwater recharge in this case? Why does such high quality treated water need to be used for groundwater recharge? Wouldn't pumped water be subject to treatment for potable use all over again? So big picture is why groundwater recharge versus our water treatment plant directly. Kirsten?
So right now there are no regulations from the state board to allow for direct potable reuse, even of this water. And so that's why we're pursuing groundwater recharge. And it's also, you know, public perception is an important component as well. And, you know, groundwater recharge has been successfully implemented in other places. So I think Miguel or anyone else, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, it's just like you said, and then there's a significant environmental buffer that adds protection that otherwise other systems like in progress like DPR do not have. That would be an artificial buffer. So it's public health and the environmental buffer that make that decision logical.
Great, thank you. I hope that answers your question, Susan. Katja Irvin has a follow-up question here. Los Angeles is planning on recycling 100% of its wastewater. Why wouldn't we aim to do this in Santa Clara County as well? You may have alluded to that a little bit, Kirsten, but feel free to jump in again.
Sure. So we are not the agency that controls the wastewater. That is the wastewater treatment plants, and there are 3 in the South Bay: San Jose, Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, and the Palo Alto Regional Plant. And we're working with both Palo Alto and San Jose. And, you know, at this point, with our water demand projections, you know, this is the project we've chosen. And there are also some benefits to continued wastewater discharge in terms of, you know, creating sort of an estuarine environment. So I would say it's a lot of different things, and also we don't have control over it.
Great, thank you. All right, Joe here asked a question. This is a bit confusing in that it seems as though we have potable drinking water, which people cannot drink until it goes through groundwater blending. But after your latest answer, I get it now. Please add fire hydrants on the pipelines to Los Gatos, and we can extend to the hills. We can keep it labeled on our end as non-potable water things. So I think it's more of a comment and remark. All right, moving on to our next question here. We have a raised hand. Stan, please unmute yourself. And I think I did not accidentally promote you to panelist this time around. So Stan, feel free to ask your question.
Sure, thanks, Albert. I noticed in the NOP that there was not any mention of the fact that this particular project is being developed as a public-private partnership, designed, build, finance, operate, and maintained by a private entity. I realize that EIRs aren't meant to talk too much about the type of ownership. The reason I bring it up is we've had extensive discussion with the Recycled Water Committee of Valley Water about one of the benefits of taking that approach is to allow for innovation and different approaches to come forward. So we've made a point of making sure that that isn't lost in the process. And in fact, at the last Recycled Water Committee meeting, the staff report had this statement in it. Public-private partnership, P3 entities, will have the opportunity to propose modifications that, if deemed feasible, would require further environmental review. So I guess my question is, the process that's being laid out now is the traditional and EIR process. Has there been any identification of how the potential P3 partners will have any other paths on getting involved with the district on alternatives that would maybe broaden the scope of the document to cover potential innovations?
Kirsten or Jim? Jim?
Jim can go ahead.
Well, I can take a stab at that, Stan, and then I'm sure Philippe probably has some comments as well.
Yeah.
And it's a great question that that we're seeing more and more in the industry as design build and ownership, alternative ownership strategies are implemented, and how those relate to the CEQA process. But oftentimes, and for most projects, the CEQA analysis becomes a point in time. So we are going to define the project as best we can, and with our understanding, and analyze that project. If innovations come into play that a P3 operator identifies after the CEQA process, then just like any other CEQA analysis, we would review what those innovations are and how they do or do not fit into the context of the analysis that was provided in the CEQA document and the findings that the board has made at the conclusion of the CEQA process. So it is really interesting item in the industry, but that's how we're taking the approach here, is that we have a project, it's very well defined, it will support the CEQA process in the event that there are changes down the road. And as you know, projects do change over time. Oftentimes we have new pipeline routes or changes in project designs that necessitate additional CEQA. And so that would be the same context that we would operate the P3 ownership approach in. Philippe, I don't know if there's anything you want to add there.
Yeah, I think you said it well. We will complete the environmental process prior to the request for proposal being issued. That said, if there are any innovations that deviate from the kind of bumpers we set up by the EIR, the boundaries, then that would be reevaluated within the context of the environmental impact report process.
Great, thank you. I have a related question here to that topic. So this is a question from Alice. Alice asked, would it be cheaper to seek new legislation to take it directly to the people? She asked in the chat box first, look at seawater recapture elsewhere, and then in the Q&A portal, she mentions that she doesn't want the water to be public-private. She prefers, well, she's worried about it being becoming like a water bottling company kind of thing. She's saying that let's do public things by public means. So hopefully I captured the essence of that. So the first part is about looking at seawater recapture. I think we want to tackle that first, about why we may be using purified water from wastewater reuse versus seawater recapture. So Kirsten or Miguel?
Sure, I can start. Seawater has a lot more salt in it, and that therefore would require a lot more energy to produce pure water from. So using wastewater, which has a lower content of salt and other contaminants, is better for energy use and therefore greenhouse gases. Is there anything anyone wants to add, Miguel?
Yeah, no, that's exactly. Our research has shown that right now, with the low TDS that we get from wastewater, we don't have to crank the pressure up to more than 200 PSI, maybe 175 with the improved RO membranes. If it was saltier water, that pressure can easily be 1,000 PSI or even 5,000 PSI, depending on what levels of TDS. And that really significantly increases the energy demand to push that water through the membrane and really increase energy usage.
Great. Yeah, for those, thank you. And for those wondering, TDS stands for total dissolved solids. And so that's usually the common measurement of how much salts and contaminants or anything that's mineralized in the water. And so sometimes if you have a high amount of TDS, you have to really have lots more pressure pushing the water through reverse osmosis. I think I captured that correctly from the tours. All right, the second part.
Answer the other question on the public-private?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the public-private partnership does not mean that Valley Water relinquishes ownership. We will maintain ownership. This is just a way to implement this project in a way that may be cheaper or more innovative and therefore has less impacts on rates.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to our next question here from Roy Hayes. Roy asked, what are the major constituents in the reverse osmosis discharge? Is it mostly salt?
I can start, but maybe Miguel can finish. So yeah, it is mostly salt, but there are, it's basically what's in the wastewater that is being discharged to the bay, but more concentrated. Do you want to add anything to that, Miguel?
Yeah, no, that's correct. It's already material that's already there and already flowing through the bay. They were just concentrated. And when we talk about salts, we're not just talking about table salt, sodium chloride. It's all the different types of materials that when you evaporate the water, what's left behind it. So it's very inclusive of a wide range of substances.
Great, thank you. All right, we pick a question here from Peter. Are there opportunities to enhance stream flows for fish and wildlife while also recharging groundwater? I think it's maybe a geography problem. Kirsten?
Well, yeah, so it's not part of this project. We're only looking at groundwater recharge for part of this project. And I'm not sure if using purified water in streams, you know, what impacts that would have.
I think also a lot of the wastewater plants are downstream of a lot of streams. And so we have to do this big loop back around to the beginning of streams to make it worthwhile, I think.
I'd like to add, Kirsten, to Mr. Dreckmeyer's question. So again, Kirsten, you are right that you know, putting it directly into the streams and we're going to Los Gatos ponds, which would be Los Gatos Creek. But I do want to also highlight, though, that those Camden ponds there are actually fed by numerous things. We are able to actually take Lexington or Vasona water, and actually we have a water right at the Kirk diversion, which takes water from the stream, puts it into the pond. So having although we may not be able to put the purified water directly into the streams, this will allow us through conjunctive use to possibly have more water from our local sources, such as Lexington or Vasona or Kirk, to help meet flows through that area. So it's not necessarily going to be directly used there, but this supply could help in a conjunctive use scenario, allow us to maintain maintain local water for recharge.
Great, thank you, Aaron. And that's our Chief Operating Officer of Water Utility Division, Aaron Baker. All right, we have a question here from Arthur Kelly in our chat box. Is the purified water plant at San Antonio roadside involves payment to Palo Alto for the land? Does it make sense to build such a plant so close to the bay where it's subject to sea level rise? And the next part of this question is there a groundwater recharge zone near the San Antonio site? So I'm gonna start with Kristen first, and then we may have to also ask some other staff to chime in as well.
Trying to remember all the parts of it. So yes, it would involve, you know, leasing the land from Palo Alto. So there would be a lease payment to Palo Alto. And then in terms of finding a better location, there aren't that many locations in Palo Alto. It's a very built out city. And we're working with the city, and this was the location that was determined to be the most feasible. We actually had a whole study on recycled water opportunities in this part of the county. And so this site was chosen as one of the most feasible sites. And then there was a sea level rise question, right?
Yeah, there was, does it make sense to build a plant so close to the bay where it's subject to sea level rise?
That is definitely a concern. And as we talked about before, we will need to look at that in the EIR, how this facility will be protected from sea level rise.
And then Albert, was there a quick question about, I just wanted to, I think the question was about the recharge areas and where there was there a recharge. So Palo Alto or other areas are in the confined zone where recharge doesn't, where it's not economical, or we don't get the kind of flow of the recharge. So the Los Gatos recharge ponds have been around for quite a while, and the district actually, or sorry, Valley Water actually started, you know, our whole premise was groundwater recharge to offset pumping. And so the Los Gatos recharge system is one of the better performing systems that we've learned over time that has the capacity to take this water on a regular basis and be able to actually know that we're putting it into good use. One of the things that we also want to do is, you know, once we do have the plant and we are having it function and keep it up and running, so that there's so that we always also have capacity to take the you know, the purified water that'll be coming from the site. So yeah, we've looked very closely at hopefully trying to find you know, a closer recharge facility, but through all of our research and through our years of experience, we still believe that the Los Gatos recharge system is one of the best areas for this water.
Right, thank you, Aaron. And then the author asks a follow-up question. Could a cheaper plant be built by expanding the San Jose plant? Kirsten?
Yes, it would be likely cheaper to expand the San Jose plant than to build a new one in Palo Alto.
Right, thank you. And then we have some questions here in the Q&A portal. Thank you for your continued engagement here tonight. I know it's almost dinner time, so thank you for hanging in there. Jennifer asked, with the Los Gatos recharge upland, did you consider putting the plant up there, less vulnerable to sea rise? This may be related to the source water issue, but Kirsten?
Yeah, so we want to be close to where the wastewater that we're then purifying is produced, to minimize pumping and therefore impacts on, you know, greenhouse gas emissions. And there's also not much room up there at the Los Gatos ponds. And we would then have to figure out how to do concentrate management. So it would be like 2 pipelines of that same length and more disruption in terms of construction. So putting it near the bay is the better option for this project.
And then Jim, maybe you could chime in again on how we're gonna, you know, I mean, there are other projects, we do understand sea level rise and we know that it's happening, but you know, we definitely are gonna analyze those things, and hopefully some of those partner projects we've been looking at will help, you know, well, actually the Palo Alto plant itself and the new facility that we're building. So that is definitely something we're going to take very seriously in the EIR, right, Jim?
Yep, no, you're correct. And there are regional efforts underway to provide. We oftentimes start thinking about this individual facility that we're talking about, but sea level rise affects the entire bay shore fringe and often very deeply into communities along the bay. So it's a real issue for the bay over time. And so there's quite a bit of work going into that. So this would be one site location, but in order to protect it, you know, we would be looking at these more regional efforts that will protect not only this site, but other residential and commercial areas that are already developed.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to our next question here. Katja Urban asks, what happens in wet years when the water table is high and there's a lot of imported water to send to recharge ponds? Aaron, you might answer that.
Yeah, so you know, I mean, actually, I would be at least if the dry year we're in right now would almost be a good thing to have a little bit more water, or to have this drought source. So what the district Valley Water is also involved in various scenarios where we can groundwater bank or trade or exchange our imported water deliveries for various times. Not only that, but Anderson Reservoir will be back with us in less than 10 years, and you can actually store imported water in that particular reservoir also. So you know, there is a balancing act of making sure that we have the, you know, the right, we don't want to be, you know, overcommitted or oversubscribed to certain things. And in wet years, we will have to find places to kind of put water. We also understand that, you know, the imported water, which travels, you know, theoretically, those water rights are coming from Shasta, travels many, many miles. And the idea of those deliveries or the amount of deliveries that we'll have from those importer water systems, what investments we need to do to make sure that they will be moving forward in time. And so we have a water supply master plan that helps us manage some of those things. But we definitely understand that it is correct. There will be certain years where we may have some more water. That will be when we'll be banking our importer water, transferring our importer water, or doing some of those other things. It's really the kind of that catch-22 of, if you had storage, where would you store that water so you would have more for drier years? But yes, in that particular area, the Los Gatos recharge ponds can take all of those particular amounts of water. So we would be looking for other places to use or store our imported water. Another quick plug would be, though, is that we have a very diverse groundwater recharge management system. And so we can take, even though we wouldn't be using imported water, maybe at the Canman ponds, there are plenty of other facilities that may be there. But then when the water level is high, or when it is very wet outside, we would be looking at banking that imported water.
Kristen, do you want anything to add?
No, thank you.
Great, thank you. Follow-up question from Arthur in the chat box. Could a pipeline be built to bring Purified Water Project water, I'm assuming, from Palo Alto, along with a reverse pipeline to bring 3 million gallons per day of water as promised? I'm not quite sure if I understand the question correctly, but I'm a Kirsten first, or?
I don't understand the question. Can you say that again?
Could a pipeline be built to bring Purified Water Project from Palo Alto, along with a reverse pipeline to bring 3 million gallons per day of water as promised?
Is this about the Palo Alto agreement, possibly?
Arthur, if you can put in a clarification to your question in the chat box, we'll come back and loop back with that response. In the meantime, we'll jump to the next question here from Kevin from Santa Clara. Is there any way to work with school districts or other entities to make these sites observable, interactive for students and others interested in the water process? I think that's a plug for our virtual tour program and tour program at the Silicon Valley Advanced Water Purification Center. In non-COVID times, you would have been able to do a field trip there and sign up for tours, for a private tour to see all those processes work. You can touch things, membranes, to see the water being purified and even try some of the water, although not everyone gets a chance to try that. These days, it's a virtual tour, which is still doable. You can still access a virtual tour for your classroom at purewaterforyou.org. If I missed anything, Kirsten?
No, perfect.
Great. So Kevin, we can connect you with our outreach staff to set something up if you're interested in that program. All right. Arthur, if you're still around, Arthur Keller, please feel free to clarify your question. Hopefully we can get to that. If not, and Kevin says he's very interested. So Kevin, I will put my email in the chat box. Feel free to send me an email. I'll connect you with our staff on the tour program. And also I'm the liaison for the project as well. So if you have some other issues, please also let me know as well. Question from David here. David asked, has it been finalized that the new plant will be built in Palo Alto on San Antonio Road, or is it still up in the air? Lastly, do you have an ETA for when they will start construction on the new plant and when it will be up and running? Kirsten?
Sure. It is still up in the air. We are doing analyses and we're negotiating with our partners so that we can have all the items we need to build this treatment plant, for which we need water, land, and a way to manage that RO concentrate we've been talking about. And we're hoping that our board will make a decision this summer on which of the sites they choose based on those different analyses. And then in terms of construction, 2024, I think, is when we would start, and then by 2028, we hope to have the water running to the Los Gatos recharge system.
Great, thank you. All right, I think we're through our questions here. Arthur, if you're still around, we're happy to take your question or a clarification about the reverse pipeline question. Other than that, we still have some time here to work with. Feel free to put in your questions. If not, you can always submit your questions in, I think Arthur did, sorry. The chat box question gets very, very fast. I always miss it. So Arthur did quite clarify. So Arthur asked, Palo Alto is currently building a 10 million gallon per day recycled water plant, which would feed this plant. Could this water feed a pipeline to the Purified Water Project plant in San Jose and build a 3 million gallon per day pipeline of imported water at the same time? Dig once, put 2 pipelines in, per the agreement with Palo Alto. I think that might be a different plant with different functions, but Kirsten, want to chime in on that?
Yeah, so I think the plant that Palo Alto is currently building is smaller than 10 MGD. They are trying to enhance, or they're not building it yet. They're hoping to build a plant that would enhance their non-potable recycled water. We have not looked at the idea of pipelines going back and forth between San Jose and Palo Alto, so it's not something we're currently analyzing as part of this project. But the countywide reuse plan does talk about different connections, so maybe Miguel wants to add something.
There, as the countywide master plan is looking at for the long-term vision for 2040. So we're looking at opportunities, not how to expand it and how to potentially add laterals to the conveyance to provide water along the way. So there are opportunities on that, and that's going to be a report that will be finalized in the next couple of weeks. And it will have also information for this 10 MGD facility as well. So it'll help address some of those potential variations that you mentioned.
Great. And then Henry, did you want to chime in as well? Henry from our Recycled Purified Water Unit is an engineer with the unit.
Yeah, just quickly, Kirsten, to build on what Kirsten already said, currently Palo Alto is in the design phase of the facility, the enhanced facility that they're building, and it's a 1.125 NGD facility. So basically, it's a 1 million gallon per day facility that will enhance their existing recycled water.
Great, thank you. And then Arthur asks the follow-up question is, where would the water come from this plant, if not the Palo Alto treatment plant? And please feel free to use the Q&A box. I tend to miss questions in the chat box. So all right, Kirsten?
Yes, so both the plant that Henry and I just talked about that Palo Alto is building themselves to enhance their non-potable recycled water, as well as if the project we're describing here today is located in Palo Alto, both of those water sources would be the Palo Alto wastewater treatment plant.
I think also Peter here in the Q&A was clarifying. I think Arthur's question refers to the Palo Alto option to buy some of the advanced purified water. If it does, how will that water get from San Jose to Palo Alto?
So Valley Water signed an agreement with Palo Alto in 2019 to secure an option for the wastewater for this plant, provide funds for the plant that Palo Alto is building themselves, as well as a water supply option. That water supply option was not necessarily purified water. It was just drinking water in case it was needed for both Palo Alto and Mountain View. So it would come, it wouldn't have to come from San Jose to Palo Alto.
And Aaron or Jim, anything to add to the unmute yourself? Oh, all right. Moving on to our next question here. Thank you for continuing to be engaging with our staff here. I'll make sure I didn't miss anything. It's live. All right. So Larry, I'm hoping I'm saying this correctly. What's the difference in length between the pipeline from the Palo Alto site versus the San Jose site to the Los Gatos recharge pond?
It's about 18 miles from San Jose and 20 from Palo Alto.
Okay, thank you. All right. Looks like we're through our questions, unless if anyone has any other potential questions in the Facebook world or in our Zoom world here. I think we can wrap up for today. We can give you one last chance here. I'm going to give you a quick countdown. Type in that last question, whether you're on your mobile device or in the laptop. 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you all. I'm going to send things back over to Melanie. Oh, one person, Arthur. Let's see here. So we're going to do this one last question here and we'll hand things back to Melanie. But Arthur asks, how would Palo Alto get potable water from the water district or Valley Water? Let's see, Kirsten?
I'll give it to Aaron.
Yeah. So
Arian, there you go.
yeah, it would be, well, we hope, the closest we have the Mountain View distributary or a couple of treated water pipelines that do make it in the vicinity. And so there could be options of extending those pipelines to various places over there. Of course, water supply in this new world could mean regional also, could be understanding and partnering with other retailers or other things to make sure that we, that we can efficiently meet the requirements of the agreement, but maybe not have to build an additional pipeline. So there are, there are what we would hope to be future multiple ways we could do that. One that we know would work would be extending one of our existing treated water pipelines that it basically ends in Mountain View up to the Palo Alto area.
I'd like to add one more thing, Albert, if I could. So this project, by replenishing groundwater, does help Palo Alto as well, because Palo Alto has emergency supply wells in case their Hetch Hetchy system goes down, to be able to provide water to the city, and therefore a sustainable groundwater supply is also of interest to Palo Alto.
Great, thank you for that. And thank you for all sticking through. Melanie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Albert. And as we wrap this evening up, I wanted to thank all of our staff for the great presentation and for running this process. I also want to thank our board chair, Tony Estamera, as well as our two directors, Richard Santos and Gary Kerman, for joining us and making comments. And then lastly, I really wanted to thank the audience for your great questions. I really appreciate the participation. If you happen to think of a question later, or we didn't get to answer your question, please remember you can email our staff or visit our project website at valleywater.org, Purified Water Project. I think Albert can put that in the chat. And please remember that you can still submit formal written comments to the CEQA scoping process. That's the California Environmental Quality Act scoping process. Staff will take these comments into account as we work on the draft environmental impact, which will come out later this year. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe and good rest of the night.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.